Welcome to week 15 of the Tailgate. I'm Michelle Margaux, joined by Ralph Vacchiano. Soon we're going to be joined by Albert Breer, who discusses the future of Sam Darnold and how Bill Belichick can control whether or not Trevor Lawrence comes to the Jets. But first, ever since the Giants won last week, things could not have gone worse. Washington won 2 straight, and the Giants looked absolutely terrible against the Cardinals. Ralph, who has the edge in the NFC East?
Well, I don't have a fancy chart for you this week, but I can tell you that the Giants' chances of making the playoffs started to plummet when all that happened last week because Washington right now has the edge. Now, I know that the Giants have the tiebreaker over Washington for having beaten them twice, but Washington's schedule the rest of the way is just ridiculously easy. Meanwhile, you've got the Giants who have to face the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns before they get to what they hope will be an easy soft landing in Week 17 against the Dallas Cowboys. And making matters worse, the division is completely bunched up now. You can't even rule out the Dallas Cowboys with their schedule because they get the 49ers who are beatable, and then they finish with the Eagles and the Giants. So at this point, all 4 teams are involved, but Washington clearly has a leg up on everybody else.
Yeah, Ralph, and then there's the Jets.
Yep.
Let's dive right into the comment section. And Ralph, even after 4 straight wins, the criticism of Daniel Jones returns with just 1 loss.
Yeah, it sure did. And I did a poll on Twitter this week to ask Giants fans what their feeling was about him as their franchise quarterback. And fans just do not seem sure as to whether this is the guy going forward. And honestly, that's the right answer because he's struggling in his second year. He has clearly taken a step back. But you can't forget that he's still really young. He showed a lot of potential last year. Most quarterbacks take some time to fully develop. And I always go back to Eli Manning, who took until his 4th season to put it all together. And late in his 4th season, you remember, fans were burning his jersey in the parking lot. 2 months later, he won a Super Bowl. So I wouldn't give up on Daniel Jones, but I don't know if he's the right guy or not. I think we're probably a year away from figuring that out.
Well, when the Giants drafted him 6th overall in 2019, Baker Mayfield, who, by the way, the Giants play on Sunday, came out and said that it blew his mind that the Giants drafted him that high. So Mayfield obviously had a great rookie season, then took a step back last season before bouncing back this year. What are the elements that allow a quarterback to reach that next level in year 3?
Well, first of all, that was just stupid. NFL people were really high on him, so it wasn't a blow-your-mind type of pick. That being said, what does Daniel Jones need? He needs to, calm down a little bit. I think right now he looks a little jittery in the pocket. He's obviously still working on his fumbling issues. He doesn't really have good, reliable receivers. Things are off with Darius Slayton. Evan Ingram is good 1 minute, terrible the next. Obviously Saquon Barkley was lost for the season. So, a quarterback sometimes is the product of what's around him, and Daniel Jones is going to need some help.
Let's high step in the friend zone and welcome in Albert Breer, senior reporter and lead content strategist for the MMQB. Thank you so much for joining us, Albert.
You got it. Good to be with you guys.
Do you still believe that Sam Darnold can be a starting quarterback in the league?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's definitely potential for him to go somewhere else and get a nice restart. This is a very unique situation. And I don't think the Jets would move on for just any quarterback. Fact is, Trevor Lawrence is on a different level than most quarterbacks we've seen come out. He's in a category with John Elway, with Peyton Manning, with Andrew Luck. Coming out, that's the sort of grade that he's going to have, and a true once-in-a-decade prospect at the most important position. That's why you're moving on from Sam Darnold. It's not because Sam can't play. It's because the other guy is a generational prospect.
All right, well, what happens then if the Jets blow the number 1 pick, end up at number 2? Is there a quarterback there that they would consider over Sam Darnold?
Maybe. I mean, Ralph, I think the thing you want to look at here more than anything else is I like the assessment of Joe Douglas, who didn't draft Sam Darnold, his assessment of Sam Darnold and what he's seen so far. And then, there's some financial repercussions here too. After year 3 is really when you have to marry your young quarterback. That's the way it is. If they do wind up with a 2nd pick and they are sure that Sam Darnold's their guy going forward, then not only will they have to pick up the 5th-year option, they also got to look at extending him. The thing that going to, whether it was a Justin Fields, a Zach Wilson, a Trey Lance, whoever it is, the thing that would do for you is it would restart the clock with the quarterback on a rookie deal. And so then you'd be in a position where for the next few years you're playing with that advantage and you're not totally married to the guy that you have in the building.
Right. And obviously, if they did draft a quarterback 1 or 2, it would be a mess to keep Sam Darnold around. They'd have to trade him somewhere. What's his value in the league? What could they get in return if they had to put him on the market?
You'd have to look at teams that really would be going back to their assessment in 2018 and who he is and who like the flashes that they've seen the last 3 years. So I do think there would be a market because it's sort of a unique situation where the Jets can sell the idea. It's not like this guy failed. We just have a better opportunity here in front of us. So I think it's, something logically you can kind of wrap your head around if you're another team. There are a fair number of teams that really thought highly of Sam coming out in 2018 that might be willing to deal, a second round pick and maybe a day 3 pick for him, or maybe even a late first rounder.
More with Albert in a moment, but first.
And now deep thoughts from Giants and Jets Twitter.
My dad was as big a Jets fan as it got. Season ticket holder since '67, wore his Jets hat and or jacket until the day he died a year ago. In what can only be seen as a beautiful tribute, the Jets have not won a game since he passed. Thanks, guys, for honoring his memory.
Daniel Jones is boring to watch and looks confused most of the time. Why can't Giants get someone like Baker or Murray with more personality? Watching DJ put me to sleep.
Giants. Tears on my pillow every night.
Can we give Sam Darnold a break from press conferences? This is truly depressing watching him talk. I just want to give him a hug.
My dad was a Division I kicker in the 1960s. He's available if the Jets reach out.
At Giants. Please start Colt next week. I would literally get Giants tattooed on my if he beat Baker Mayfield.
As a Giants fan, I would rather have Cleon Jones, ex-Met, S.D. Jones, former WWF wrestler, Roy Jones Jr., boxer, and even Shirley Jones, 80-year-old actress. All of them could do better than Daniel Jones.
Sean McVay has 10 days to prepare for Adam Gase, which is like giving Bobby Filet 2 weeks to prepare a Hot Pocket.
The Jets obviously have other issues besides just quarterback, and one of them, of course, is going to be head coach. I think we all know Adam Gase is going to be fired at the end of the season. Where do you see them and Joe Douglas turning for a new coach, and could they dip into the college ranks this time around?
Yeah, I think that's something to consider, Ralph. And part of it is because so much of Joe's experience came at the college at the college level. He's got a ton of connections. I don't think you can totally dismiss the idea of Jim Harbaugh. Now, I know some people are going to look at that and say, well, look at Michigan right now. Well, this guy's been like sort of a Bill Parcells type of figure everywhere he's gone. Yeah, he eventually wears everybody out, but he does get immediate results. I would also say that Woody Johnson, who's going to be back from the UK at some point, has long had a fascination with Jim Harbaugh, so that plays into it. I think it's just worth at least keeping an eye on that one. And then the second name is one I think Jets fans are fairly familiar with. Matt Campbell's name's really kind of built some momentum as a potential NFL coaching candidate. When you look at what the Jets need, kind of a program builder, a guy who's going to be able to flip the culture upside down. I think Matt Campbell's that kind of guy. They vetted him. Matt Campbell ultimately decided that he didn't want in on the Jets situation in 2019, but the Jets at least have done their homework on him.
I know you know Bill Belichick well, covered him for a lot of years, and I'm fascinated with conspiracy theories. So I want to look to the last week of the season. The Jets still winless at that point.
I know where we're going with this.
Exactly. Bill Belichick having a chance to not face Trevor Lawrence in the division for the rest of his career. Do you think at all he would consider not necessarily tanking, but maybe resting starters to try to ease the Jets into a victory that would cost them Trevor Lawrence?
I love the storyline. I think it's really interesting. Like if the Patriots were to lose the Dolphins or the Bills for the next 2 weeks, they're in essence going to be eliminated from the playoff picture. Maybe you're in a position where you could game the system a little bit and keep Trevor Lawrence out of the division and improve your own draft pick, by the way. We know that Bill still holds some old grudges from his time with the Jets. So after all these years of kind of rubbing the Jets' nose in it, 20 years of doing that, maybe now he can kind of deliver the death blow to the franchise and keep them away from, a quarterback who's considered a once-in-a-decade type of prospect.
All right, Albert, thank you so much for your time and your insight. We certainly appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
I'm in the pocket. Woo! I'm in the pocket. Woo!
Time now for In the Pocket, where we put money in your pocket. And Ralph, we're going to start with the Giants. They're 3.5-point underdogs on Sunday Night Football against the Browns.
You know, I was thinking about picking the Giants in this game. I think the Giants defense can stay in the game, hold the scoring down a little bit, but not enough to get them within 3.5 points. I'm going to have to take the Browns here.
All right, well, now we're going to discuss the Jets, and obviously they're going to be underdogs. But what do you think is a fair point spread for them?
Wow, going out to Los Angeles and after looking like they basically gave up a week ago, I mean, I would think they're probably 2 touchdowns, at least maybe 15-point underdogs.
Actually, they're 17-point underdogs
Wow.
in LA against the Rams.
That's honestly astonishing for a regular season game, and it should be completely embarrassing to them. I can't pick the Jets here. I think they might lose by 20 or more.
Well, I don't think you have any room to talk about embarrassing just because last week your lock was the Texans -2, and they lost by 29. And my lock, by the way, was the Colts, and they won by 17. So
rub it in.
What I'm doing here. Who's your lock?
Well, it was so bad that honestly, if I had a white flag to wave, I would do that right now. I'm giving up. There's no point in me actually making a pick. So what I did was I put 32 team names into my Santa hat here, and I'm just going to pick a random lock because it couldn't possibly be any worse than me actually using my brain. All right, my lock of the week, the Raiders.
Ralph's lock of the week.
Yeah, well, we'll see. My lock of the week is the Bears because Ralph had such little faith in them last week, and they're 3-point underdogs against the Vikings this week. So I have faith where Ralph did not.
Michelle's lock of the week.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Tailgate. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For Ralph Vacchiano and Michelle Margaux. And thank you once again to Albert Breer for joining us. You can listen to his podcast, The Albert Breer Show. We'll see you next week.